So at this point, we were blessed with Dave and Diane, and I had forgot that Pete introduced us to you. So you're Pete's fault, huh? All right, I had totally forgot that. I like that information now. I can remember when I was a part of Calvary Chapel, West Covina, when we hired these guys, and we initially brought Pete in to work on radio ministry. As the assistant pastor back then, I did everything, and that included even, we're old, I'm old, I shouldn't say they're, I'm old. And back in those days, when we were on the radio, and God was really blessing the radio ministry at Calvary Chapel, West Covina, we had to have to make these reel-to-reels, and each radio station would have to be mailed a reel-to-reel. And believe it or not, one of my jobs was doing the intro and the outro. And I don't have any idea how to do electronical stuff. And so I remember going to Rollins saying, you got to hire somebody who knows what they're doing because I am messing this up. And that was when, it's not the only thing that we brought Pete in to do. Worship, we obviously brought in Dave. But it's a blessing to be here and to see what God is doing and to sit down with these guys and to hear what God has been doing and is doing. And the interesting thing is, they still don't know exactly what God's doing in their lives, as do none of us, okay? I think our problem, I really do, I think our problem is when we think we got it figured out, when we think, all right, here's where I'm going for the rest of my life, I think that's when we have the problem. Because God's always smiling and going, okay, go ahead and think that. And follow the Lord. The important thing in all of our lives is you never try to lead. It's tempting, never lead, always follow the Lord. And so I'm excited to have this opportunity to have Pete share with us this morning. We're going to open up with showing a little video, and then Pete will come on up after the video. So when he comes up is when you can applaud. All right, let's go ahead and roll it.
The Celtics, they have this phrase that says the thin places, and what that means is it's a place where the curtain or the wall between eternity and our reality is so thin that you can actually start to see and maybe start peeking into it. So for me, photography can be that, where you can actually experience something at an image and it recalls things. For me, when I see an image and it does something for me, it's probably no different than a parable that Jesus spoke. All of a sudden, in just one hit, bang, it's like, wow, there's something there and it's telling me a story. And that's kind of my dream when I take a photograph. Is that going to tell the story? That's what I really want it to do.
The North Shore is one of the most beautiful and famous parts of Hawaii, full of surf culture and natural beauty. Today, Kalo on the street becomes Kalo on the beach as we hang out with Peter David Claproth, a guy who has the unique ability to capture the beauty of God's creation. Photography is just one of the ways he has found to minister to the community on the North Shore and beyond.
I don't know how old I was. I was probably 18, 19. And I love photography, and I thought, I got a mail order of a Canon AE1. So I started shooting, but I loved Yosemite. I mean, as a kid, we'd go there every summer. And living in Southern California, going up to Yosemite, my mom just loved the place. So every summer I was out there shooting, and sure enough, ran into Ansel Adams. He has a studio there, or a gallery, and saw his stuff. And I think that's probably what triggered it. He is well known, probably one of the pioneers in photography. I mean, his early stuff starts like in 1920. I remember growing up thinking, I just want to do that. And to me, it's kind of simple, but try and do it. It's a lot harder, right?
Pete and I, we go back to Calvary Chapel, West Covina, probably 1980, and we did ministry together. I was going to film school at the time, and the ministry was getting involved in video. They had a video camera, and I saw Pete and a couple other guys working it. If you ever see how directors and cinematographers work, you got to find that guy to be able to visualize and capture his vision, right? So we work as a team like that. And then, you know, Pete has such a creative eye. It didn't surprise me that, you know, some of the photography and what he's doing, he's just always had good composition, good, you know, just, I think just a gift from God.
Pete has had a lot of suffering in his life, but he also has an extraordinarily deep and abiding faith. And so somehow he's able to capture the pain and the beauty and the majesty and the chaos in his photography. It's extraordinary.
Pete's photography really captures the moment, and it feels to me like it's capturing action. It may be because he does a lot of wave photography, and so when you're looking at it, you almost feel like you're seeing motion, but you're not, because it's a still.
He travels around and he has like a really good eye for just detail and perspective.
Pete's a go-getter. He's always moving, he's always doing something, he's always recreating himself. He loves the Lord, of course, and just wants to serve and do whatever the Lord calls him to do.
One thing we started to do here on the North Shore was do a photography workshop, and people could come in, and it was a great opportunity to connect with the community and teach them photography from square one all the way through. We'd go out and shoot sunsets and stuff. It was great.
In high school I took some classes, and then this workshop, I learned so much more, just like the details of cameras and just like composition and even Lightroom and stuff, the more processing aspect of photography.
And then I release it.
I just turn it on and just see if it's there.
So
yeah, if you release it, it'll go away. You see it? Just kind of tilt it back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Right off the bat, my sister and I were joking that it's like photography seminary. You know, we're talking about theology, and then he's teaching us, you know, how to adjust the exposure on our camera. And I've really just loved integrating, you know, that faith and the learning aspect of it. And as Christians, I just think that's really important, to bring faith into every aspect. And so, you know, you can take God out of it if you want, but he's the one creating the waves and painting the sunset. And so just, you know, taking that picture and be like, man, guys, like, God is so cool. And I just love being able to freely talk about that and have him, as the teacher and the mentor, be able to encourage us and teach us that as well.
He would just incorporate like the spiritual aspect of God's nature and just how we can capture that with photography, and what a privilege that is.
The best camera can only get about 13 steps of dynamic range. That's very scientific. It's a raw digital file, it's just information, and it doesn't look that great. All the colors are dull, everything looks kind of subdued. All it is you gotta imagine, you're just capturing information.
Right.
So that's the job, you're trying to capture as much info as you can. Therefore, when we go into our processing, that's when we begin to deal with the colors and so forth, and we bring out what we want to bring out and to pull back what we don't want. So you can bring focus to the image, you can create or add color that's already there, but you're bringing it up. And the other thing about photography is you're always trying to find a different perspective, because you want to take people to a place they haven't been before. That's the valuable photograph, when they can look at something and think, wow, I've never seen that before, I've never been there before.
I love looking at these portraits and talking about them with you, because these are like windows into time of your moments with God doing what you love to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, you put a lot of work and a lot of time, a lot of effort to be there, and I get you to sit here and enjoy the fruit of that.
Yeah.
And that is such a cool thing to see. So usually Pete is shooting scenic landscapes, but today we're going where the action is. The Pipeline Masters, the most prestigious surf event in the world, is happening right now. And I'm heading back out there so Pete can teach me a thing or two. Just gotta make one quick stop before we go.
this guy.
Oh gosh. Hey Pete.
Hey Doug, what are you doing, man?
I was just grabbing you a shave ice.
Doug, you've got to come here. It's now or never. We're at the quarterfinals.
Oh.
You got to get here or you're going to miss the whole thing. All right.
Okay, I'm coming.
All right, get here now. Oh.
Did I miss anything?
Yeah, you missed tons. Let's do it about here, okay? So get your camera out, man.
Okay.
Come on, dude.
I'm coming.
Lens cap. Always take the lens cap off. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to make sure you're shooting at a super high shutter speed. So you want to make sure you're like try to get like 2500th of a second.
I've
higher.
never done stills.
Oh, okay. This should be exciting then.
Okay, so.
All right. You're on your own.
So
put it in the photo. Put it in the photo. Say, oh, look at that. That's so beautiful.
Oh, I'm missing everything.
Yeah. How many? I've taken already 20 shots. So where are you at?
Okay, I'm coming.
This is the carnival, dude, and we've got all this stuff over here. Come check this out. That's pipe. This is pipe. Fully crazy. Aloha, everybody. You guys messed up. When someone says aloha, you have to say what back? Aloha. Right, we're going to do it again. Here we go. Aloha. Aloha. Very good. Okay, this is really technical here. Jason's giving me tons of stuff. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, how are we? Great. That's good. Okay, one more. Is that right? Yep. Hey, well, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to be here. Hey, I know some of these people. And before we start, I want to give this to Jim. This is a photo that I took, I think it was a couple of winters ago, and I call it Cloud by Day. Remember that scripture, cloud by day, fire by night? It's really interesting because there's this cloud that's hanging right over this wave. As the video talked about, I love doing Ansel Adams stuff. You know, I've always loved his stuff, and that reminded me, I always used to think, if Ansel Adams can come to Hawaii, that's what he would get. So yeah, but anyway, thanks Jim for having me. Put that up. If I find out that you just hung it up with some thumbtacks, I'm coming after you. All right? So it's so good to be here this morning. This morning, I just want to spend some time and talk about some lessons I've learned as a photographer and how that has impacted my faith. And we're going to share my photography along the way. So all the photos you see on the screen are photos that I've taken, mostly on the North Shore of Oahu. Some shots are from Kauai. Actually, the next shot will be from Kauai. And there's some prints in the side there if you're interested in them. But let's get into it. So the first thing is, this is a shot from Kauai. It's called the Nepali Coast. And I just want to thank Kalo TV. They did that piece on me, which was really a shock. Really, you want to do something? And they told me it's 30 minutes long. I thought, oh, you're kidding me. It must be boring. But they did such a great job that made me look great. And if you would like to see the video, you can go to kalotv.com and you can watch the whole thing. It's great. There's some really good stuff in there. And if you would like to know more about the ministry, it is a ministry. They do a lot of Bible teaching and things and programs. And the funny thing is now I'm actually working part-time with the station. So Doug, the guy who is my protege, the photographer, we work together, and it's great. He's just a great guy. But this morning, what I want to do is I want to start with a quick lesson about photography. So after this, you guys will all be masters, okay? So what is photography? Well, it's painting with light. That's what it's all about. In Hawaii, the light there is just absolutely amazing. There's something special about it. As a matter of fact, the animators from Lilo and Stitch, they wanted to go, the first thing they did was go over there and study the light. And you might think, well, what would be so different? I don't know, but it's different. It really is. There's something special about it. So photography is all about painting with light. And there's 3 foundational elements in photography. And the first one is obviously capturing the light. And sometimes there's tons of light. Other times there's no light at all. As a matter of fact, if you go out in the middle of the night and you think, what am I going to do out here with a camera? Well, if you know how to set your camera properly, you're going to see some amazing things, like billions of stars to begin with. It's a beautiful thing to see what you can capture. The second point is capturing time. So capturing time is all about shutter speed. And the modern day camera today can shoot 1/8,000th of a second to 30 seconds and even longer than that. So imagine 1 second, split that 8,000 times, and that's basically what a camera can catch. The good thing about that, when it's super fast, you can get a lot of really good details, especially like those surfers and this crazy shot of this water coming up over a cliff. It's just amazing what you can get. And so that's number 2. So we have capturing light, capturing time, and then number 3 is all about composition. And that's really all about seeing the photo before you take it. You think, well, what is that? What do you mean? Well, literally, when you go out and you start photographing and you're really making it something that you want to do, you'll go out into a spot and you'll see it before you actually take it. And composition means creation, structure, form, ingredients, fabric, and it's all about framing. You're looking at the foreground, the background, and here's a hot tip for you guys. When you're taking photos with your iPhone or whatever, you look at the frame all the way around and you see what's there, and then that will allow you to adjust things. And so that's all about composition. So when you do those 3 things, light, time, those are technical. Composition, that's very creative. What happens is the outcome is you have art. So that's your little lesson there on photography. You guys are all pros now. But how does that impact me, or as someone who has a faith, being passionate about light, time, and composition? Well, believe it or not, it's really opened up my eyes to things that are hidden right before my very eyes. It's amazing what you start looking at and realizing what's out there. So this morning, it was a real game changer for me. And this whole talk there's just one point. Jim, you'll be impressed. 1 point. So not the 3-point sermon or, the 50-point sermon, whatever. No, it's 1 point. And that is simply observation. That's all I want you to remember. So when you go home or you're talking to your friends, hey, what was the sermon about? It was about observation. Easy peasy. Don't mess that up, okay? So observation, that's all we're talking about this morning. And it's a really important point. So the secret to becoming a great photographer is you have to be intentional, you have to stop, and you have to observe. You can observe, but if you're not being intentional about it and you're not stopping, it's not going to work. So you have to be intentional, stop, and observe. And the great thing about that is the secret to becoming a Christian that has a real relationship with Jesus Christ, you have to be intentional, you have to stop, and you have to observe. It's the same thing. And it's a great thing when you realize that, when you take the time to stop. And that's what we're going to talk about this morning. But as we go, I just want to share something in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. 2 Corinthians is a great book, and it's a hard book because you have to look at the backdrop of what was going on in that day. For Christians, it was a new thing. People, they didn't quite understand what Christianity was, and it was opposed to the culture of the day, very much so. As a matter of fact, killing Christians was the preferred entertainment of the day. That's what people did. Hey, Rick, let's go down to the Coliseum. What's going on? Oh, they got some fresh lions and some fresh Christians. There's going to be a slaughterhouse. Let's go. Oh, sounds good. That was the sport of the day. And I'm not trying to be funny here, but that was what, when you read this passage or when you read the book, keep that in mind. And notice Paul's first thing in verse 1 in chapter 4. He says, Therefore, since we have this ministry, we have not received mercy, we do not lose heart. And then dropping down to verse 4, he says this, the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers. And isn't that true? The God of this world, meaning Satan, Lucifer, the devil, he has blinded a lot of people, and they don't see what's going on. They don't understand it. He's blinded the minds of unbelievers. And then verse 6, it goes on, and he goes, for it is God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. Now, I hope you can really get that. It says, for it is God who commanded light to shine out of darkness. Isn't that interesting? Light out of darkness. That's only God can do that. And what does it shine on? It shines on our hearts. To give what? To give light of the knowledge of the glory of God in what? In the face of Jesus Christ. So that light illuminates if you're a Christian, who we're serving. And that light comes out of darkness. I think that's just so beautiful. Then he goes on in verse 8, he says this, and there are about 4 juxtapositions. I don't know if you know what that phrase is, but it means like it's filled with irony. That's the best way I can say it. He says, and again, remember the backdrop of what was going on in that time. He says, we are hard pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. To me, that's very much about the mental anguish that we can feel at times. Let's face it, we live in a world that's just nuts. And emotionally and mentally, it can make us feel very perplexed. But if you have a life with Christ, you're not in despair. Yes, you're going through this stuff, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. I don't think too many of us in this room have been really persecuted physically. And here they are. And Paul's saying, hey, we know we're not forsaken. Even though we're persecuted, we're not forsaken. And then the last one, struck down, but not destroyed. And I love this next bit, verse 16. He says, therefore, do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. That's a beautiful thing. Remember that. Even though the outward is, it's falling apart. Some of us, because, we've been around here too long, like me. but we keep going because the inward man is being renewed day by day. But here is how he ends it. I love this. It says this, we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. I love this because it's not about what you see. It's about what you don't see. And you think, well, Pete, that doesn't even make sense. No, it doesn't. It's kind of weird. But Paul says that because he's reminding us that there is more to what you see, a whole lot more. So we're introduced here to a concept that there is more than just what we see. It's an unseen reality. In fact, Paul tells us what we see is transient. It's temporary. It's not going to last. In other words, don't hang everything on your experience, the physical experience, the things that you see right now, because that's not important. That's a big lesson. Speaking about lessons, here's one for you. Have you ever stopped to watch a sunset or a sunrise or maybe a mountain vista On purpose. I'm not talking about driving down the 10 freeway. You've got a double in one hand, and then you're speeding, and then all of a sudden the sun sets, and you're like, wow, that's so beautiful. Let's try and get my phone out. You're going 80 miles an hour like you people do around here. It's crazy. And you get the shot. That's great. What a moment. No, that's not a moment. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on purpose going and say, hey, let's go to the beach. We've got some time. Let's go watch a sunset. I think there's something special about that. And I have to admit to you that those are spiritual moments. As a photographer, you do that. You get there beforehand. If you're going to a sunrise, that's a bummer because you have to get up really early. But you do it like, hey, I'm going to go catch, a great shot and that type of thing. This is a shot that's a sunset. And, I love capturing a crazy sky with a lot of drama. If I look out and there's no cloud in the sky and I'm ready to go shoot a sunset, I put my stuff away and maybe go out and just hang out because I love it when the sky is full of stuff. Even today, people, when you sit and you watch a sunset or a sunrise or a vista on purpose and you meditate and you start looking at this, I feel you can start to look beyond that. And all of a sudden, you're seeing the unseen. It becomes a real spiritual moment. Scientists today, they even believe that there are parallel dimensions going on that are happening at the same time. And if you look at science, if you cut down everything down to the atom, you've got the protons, electrons, neutrons, and then there's some other things in there they're just beginning to discover. But what's interesting is that the space around those things are bigger than the actual elements that make up the atom. Think about that for a second. So the things we don't see, well, it's there. We can't comprehend it. We can't work it out. But there's definitely an unseen for a world. Now, we as Christians, we know that the unseen world, it governs how we live. If you're a believer, if you have a life relationship with Christ, what you do is all based on that unseen world. And those things that are happening, because that's the promise that we have. But the question comes up with that is, well, if all this is transient, it's beautiful sunrise, this is a sunrise, what's the point of it anyway? Yeah, it's nice, it's beautiful, but if it's transient, if it's going to go away, what's the point of this stuff? I might as well put my camera away. It's not going to last, right? Well, we have the secret, and we find that in Romans chapter 1, verse 20, and it says this, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they, meaning us, humanity, are without excuse. Now, think about this for a second. For since the creation of the world, his, who? God's invisible attributes. You know what an attribute is? It's everything about you, right? It's how you act. It's who you are. It's, what makes you who you are. He's saying here that those invisible attributes of God are clearly seen. Isn't that interesting? Being understood by what? By the things that are made, by all of creation, even his eternal power and Godhead. You want to know about God's power and his position? Look at creation. And we're without excuse, basically. And look at this incredible statement we find in Colossians that Paul wrote about Jesus. It says this, Jesus is the image of the invisible God, for by him all things were created. Now all of a sudden we understand creation happened through Jesus. In heaven and on earth, and this is cool, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. Isn't that cool? God has created us through Jesus, and guess what? We are created for him. If you think you're created for something else, you got it wrong. You're created for Jesus Christ. That's a beautiful statement. I gotta have a drink here. I don't even know why I bring it up. Okay. So we know that creation's entire purpose is to point us to God. The one who we think is elusive, if God would show up, then I'll believe in him, right? You hear that excuse, and maybe you've used it. You know what? Every day, God is trying to reach out to you. How? Through his creation, through all the things around us. Listen to this great quote from this German theologian. His name is Meister Eckhart. He says this: if the soul could have known God without the world would have never been created. So the world is here so that we can know God, so that we can experience who he is. He is out there saying, hey guys, I'm here for you. He's courting us. He's desiring an intimate relationship with us. That's the whole thing. That's why this is here. That incredible wave is just like, hey, I'm speaking to you right now, Pete. I want you to pay attention. He wants so much to be close to us. As a matter of fact, I always say, if you were to look at the Bible, the whole deal, the whole thing about what God wants to do is he wants to be in the same room with us. Unfortunately, he's so holy and we're so corrupt. If he did that, we would fry like bacon and we wouldn't be very tasty. So he doesn't. He learned to just try and reach out in certain ways. He's given us creation. And as you study the Bible, you see all the moments where God is trying to reach out. It's not man trying to reach God. That's religion. But it's God saying, I love you so much. I just want to be in the same room with you. From the very day when God had to go look for Adam. Adam, where are you? Why are you hiding? As if God didn't know where he was. But he knew straight away there was something that was different. So no matter what, if you're looking at it with a wide-angle lens or a microscope, you're going to see the fingerprints of God everywhere. It's all about observation, learning to observe. But why is this so hard today? It feels like a lost art. What's going on in our world? Well, we're going to play that game. You guys ever heard that game, Would You Rather? I hate that game. It's the worst game ever. They tell you it's a lose-lose situation. Would you rather eat boiled snails or fried cockroaches? Well, what would you like to do? It's like, I don't want to do any of that. Well, you got to choose, the would you rather thing. Or would you rather swim with great whites? Or would you rather great white sharks? Or would you rather be stuck in a cage with a hungry lion? I don't want to do any of that. You guys are already saying, oh yeah, I'd like to, it's a bad situation. We're going to play it this morning, but I promise you it's not too bad. And hopefully it will open up your eyes a bit and make you think about your life. It sure has me. So here it is. Would you rather be bored or distracted? Which one would you rather have? Would you rather be bored or distracted? So I watched this TED Talk. I don't know if you're familiar with TED Talks. There's this lady. Her name was Manoush Zumorodi. I think that's how you pronounce it. And she talked about her life situation where she was part of Silicon Valley and, the whole deal, moving along really high speed. And then guess what? She gets pregnant. She has a baby. Her whole life slowed down tremendously. And of course, for someone who's in that, fast lane, all of a sudden, whoa, and she was bored and she was trying to work out life. And she started researching it. And she noticed some interesting things. So I want to share some of the stuff she brings out. So June 2007, the world changed. That's when it started to really change. Does anybody know what happened in June 2007? You should all know. Oh man, terrible. Jim, you need to teach him better. Okay, no, I'm joking. June 2007, what happened is the iPhone was launched. You think, oh, Pete, what's this, Are you an Apple person? No. Well, I am, but no, that's not what I'm talking about. You see, all of a sudden, the internet was in your pocket. And no matter where you went, you were connected. As a matter of fact, there were thousands of apps, and I love some of those apps. They're great. All of a sudden, I don't have to worry about directions, writing them down, or looking at remember the Thompson guide? It's on my iPhone. This is so cool. It actually talks to me. Turn right. No, right. That kind of thing. And you have all this stuff. It's convenience and connectivity like never before. But at what cost? We exchanged the spare moment for this new technology. As a matter of fact, boredom is no longer an issue. I was in a elevator not too long ago, and I just went 4 floors. It wasn't very long, so I jump in, and 3 or 4 others walk in. As soon as the door shut, everybody's pulling out their phone, and they're like looking at stuff. Like, wow. Have you ever been to a really nice restaurant and you see this really cute couple? What are they doing? They're sitting across each other and they're looking at their iPhone. They might be texting each other. I don't know, but and believe me, I've seen that happen where they're in the same room and they're texting each other. And that's the world that we live in. Boredom is no longer an issue. Instead, we are distracted. And that presents a whole new set of problems. So neuroscientists say today, There's a default mode, which we would know as being bored. And when we are bored, we do this thing called autobiographical planning. Well, what does that mean? Autobiographical planning is when our most brilliant moments of creativity occur. But guess what? We're not really doing that anymore. Distraction has taken our moments of brilliant creativity and filled it with emotional and spiritual and mental junk food. We are so distracted by stuff, that we really don't need to look at. Dr. Daniel Levitin, he says this: when shifting your attention from one thing to another, the brain has to engage neurochemical switches that uses up nutrients. So multitasking, the idea of multitasking, you know how women say, oh, we're multitaskers, you guys can't do that. Well, guess what? Guys, there's no such thing as multitasking. Our brain doesn't work that way. All it means is that we are shifting rapidly from one thing to the other. And when we're doing that, we're depleting mental resources as you go. And you have a limited supply. Interesting, isn't it? You are burning nutrients when you're doing that. Today, on average, you switch about 45 seconds every day. 45 seconds. You're switching. It used to be every 3 minutes before 2007. If you're a young adult, then you're probably doing double that anyway. You grew up with that kind of technology. And then there's a doctor, her name is Gloria Marks. She says on average, people check email 75 times a day, and they do mental switch tasks 566 times a day. And for some young people, you could probably double that. That's a lot of switching. That's a lot of burning of nutrients. The more you are shifting your attention a day, the more stressed you will become. So is the smart device evil? What do you guys think? While I take a drink. We should all grab our iPhones and then, it's great because we got a barbecue after this. So let's go, once we make our meat and all that, let's go take our iPhones and throw it on top of the barbecue. Get rid of these evil things. Well, actually, I like my iPhone. I do my accounting on it. I can invoice a client. I bought concert tickets on my iPhone. I love my iPhone. Why would I want to destroy it? Well, yeah, that'd be kind of dumb. But I want you to think about your iPhone as this. It's a power tool. And when you do gardening and you've got to cut and maybe prune a bunch of trees, there's nothing better than a chainsaw. I love a chainsaw. Cutting things like butter. It's so good. But if I don't respect that chainsaw, what happens? I thought I had 5 fingers, but I don't anymore. Or, you cut your whole arm off. Or maybe you hurt your wife or your kid. Like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. We're all in a hospital. Power tools are great, but we need to take care of them and make sure we do the right thing with them. Very much so like our smart device. If you are abusing your smart device, I'm sure you've been hurt by it before. I have. I was actually bullied by somebody on social media. I couldn't believe it, and it was bad. It really hurt, And I'm sure, I never understood it, but when I hear about kids committing suicide because of what somebody said, that was the first time I actually understood it. I realized, oh my gosh, yeah, this is powerful stuff. We as humans, we can have 100 people tell us how great we are, and then one person come up and say, you suck, you're a terrible person. We'll remember that over the 100. That's how we are. And so you can see that this smart device is very powerful. We can do some silly things with it. So there's a battle going on for your attention, and very smart people are working to keep you distracted. Did you know that there are thousands of Google engineers? Their entire job is to make sure you stay on your smart device, your iPhone or whatever you might have. Thousands of them, they want to keep you distracted. I love this quote. Listen to this. This is from the CEO of Netflix, and he says this: our biggest competition is Facebook, YouTube, and sleep. Think about that for a second. You know who you are. You guys are binging movies. Just one more episode. Just one more. Next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to get up in 3 hours and go to work. And you're looking like a zombie because you're watching zombie movies. But it's like, hey, this is what is happening. He wants to keep you up. He wants to keep you on your device so you can, I don't know why, just so they can make money, basically. And this is interesting. The only businesses who refer to their customers as users are drug dealers and technologists. We're on a new drug, everybody, and that new drug is called distraction. So now we've got this issue. Our minds and hearts are focused on the scene more than ever. We are no longer having those brilliant moments of creativity. It's time to break the hold of distraction and begin to observe and wonder and see what's out there in front of us so we can have those brilliant moments of creativity. Let's take a look at two people in the Bible. I want to close with this. There's two guys in the Bible that are just absolutely incredible, Moses and David. Both of these characters were in a place of no distraction, and more than likely were bored, very bored. What happened? God shows up. It was a brilliant moment with the Creator. So Moses, if you read the first 3 chapters of Exodus, you'll see some incredible things there. The one thing in chapter 3, well, just a bit of a backdrop, an overview. So Moses is, for his first 40 years of life, where was he? He was in Pharaoh's palace. Can you imagine? Man, lifestyles of the rich and famous, he had it all. It was a great moment. All of a sudden, he recognizes that, hey, I'm not Egyptian. I'm actually a Hebrew, and those guys are slaves. Those are my brothers, my sisters, my mom. I don't want to be here. So he leaves. He actually ends up murdering an Egyptian. He gets found out. What does he do? He runs. He just runs as far as he can. Now he's in the desert. And what is he doing? He's tending sheep, the most stupid animals in the world. It's interesting that God calls us his sheep. I don't know, just, take it on if you like. But he's there doing this, not for a couple years. I could maybe do it for a month, but he's doing it for 40 years. 40 years, think about that. I mean, next year I celebrate 40 years. And I'm just kidding. I'm actually a little bit older than that. But man, that's a lot of my life if that's all I was doing for 40 years, tending stupid animals. I'm in the desert. I hate the desert. I don't know how you guys can live here anyway. This is so hot. Hawaii's hot too, more humid. It's been crazy. But imagine just tending sheep for 40 years. I just got to let that sink into your spirit for a second. That's a long, long time. But what's interesting is one day, Moses is back in his, he knows his place, every single step of this place. And all of a sudden he looks over and he says, there's a bush. And he must have been watching it for a while because he realizes that thing's not turning into ash. It just keeps burning. What the heck? And then he turns, and it says in the passage that when Moses turned to go look at it, then God says, then I stepped in and God starts speaking to him. And the first thing he says is, hey, take off your sandals. This is holy ground. I can imagine Moses saying in his head anyway, what are you talking about, holy ground? I've been every square inch of this place, and you want me to take my sandals off now? All of a sudden it's holy? Yeah, this place is a God-forsaken place, and no pun intended. And then all of a sudden, he takes it off, and there's this voice, and God starts speaking to him. What happens? There's a brilliant moment, and things change. Next thing you know, he's heading back to Egypt, and he is called by God to lead out the people into freedom. Unfortunately, they went into wilderness as well because of their unbelief. That's a whole other story. But Moses had the opportunity to talk with God in that most boring state. David, on the backside of nowhere, watching sheep, dumb animal, bored to death. But what happened to him? He had so many moments, so many brilliant moments of creativity. He wrote Psalms, free of technology, free of any kind of distraction. He had time for autobiographical planning. And David wrote at least 73 Psalms of the 150 that we find in the Bible. Psalm 27:4, if you have a Bible, you should turn to it. We sang it this morning, but I'm going to read it in the Message version, and I think it really works for what I'm talking about. But it's a great passage. Hold on a second. He says this, and again, this is the Message. He says, I'm asking God for one thing, only one thing, to live with him in his house my whole life long. I'll contemplate his beauty. I'll study at his feet. That's the only quiet, secure place in a noisy world. The perfect getaway far from the buzz of traffic. And I like to add, far from the buzz of online traffic. This is our life right now. This is the world. We are being bombarded by so much, but we need to get out and we need to spend time in front of the Lord. So let me finish with one more brilliant moment in the Bible and one more person, and that's Elijah. Now, that's a big story. If you get a chance, look at 1 Kings chapter 18, or I think it might start in 17, 18, 19, and you guys probably know the story. But the nation was being led by king and queen, Ahab and Jezebel. They were like the power couple. Think of maybe some politicians you might know that fit that shoe. But they took the nation away from God, and they started worshiping the god named Baal, which they're very much about. Baal was very much about sacrificing babies, and that was the state of the nation. It was terrible. And God used Elijah to be a prophet and to speak the truth. And it came down to a big sacrifice showdown. Imagine this. It must have been, if I could go back and see anything in the Bible, this would be the one. So he challenges the prophets of Baal. There are about 450 of them. And he says, hey, let's build 2 altars, and we'll put a bull on each one. And then let's call on God and let's see what happens. Let's see if your God really shows up. And you know the story probably, but they did that. The prophets are dancing around. They're cutting themselves with knives, all that kind of stuff to try and bring down this fire that Baal, should do. But nothing ever happens. And I like Elijah, he says, hey, man, like a good Jew, like a good Hebrew, hey, where's your God at? Is he busy? Is he occupied? And the word occupied there really literally means, what, is he on the toilet or what? What are you doing? Where's your God at? And they couldn't do anything. They're getting more angry. They're cutting themselves up. And then Elijah says, okay, God, please show up. I can imagine he must have been really nervous. Okay, Lord, just show up, man, because I want these people to know that you are real. And what happens? Oh, and actually, by the way, Elijah, to make it harder, he dumped tons of water on top of the sacrifice, so much so that there was a moat of water around it. He says, Lord, so that they can know that you are truly God, please bring down fire. And boom, fire comes down, licks everything up the water. And, we had Texas barbecue. It was just gone. And then Elijah says, okay, let's chase these guys, these prophets. Let's take them down the river and kill them. This evil for our nation. We need to get this out of here. And so, man, imagine being used by God. You're Elijah. It's like you must be feeling pretty strong now. Wow, we're just strong in the faith. This is so good. And it must have been that way. The next day, though, Jezebel sends him a messenger and says, what you did to the prophets, I'm going to do to you before sunset. Like, oh, you would think, no problem, give it your best shot because God's on my side. Well, no, that's not what Elijah did. He took off. First of all, he was probably very tired. There was a lot of stuff going on. I'm leaving out a lot of the story. But he runs like Forrest Gump. He just keeps on going. And, next thing you know, there's a lot of stuff that happens, but you should read it. And next thing you know, he's at Mount Horeb. And he's in this wet, damp cave. And he's actually saying, God, just take my life. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Going from that height to where he's at now. And, he just wanted to die. And here in 1 Kings 19, it might be hard to read on this shot, but because it's a big passage, but I really want to point this out. So he's exhausted. He's done. He's beside himself. And look what happens here. It says, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after a fire, a still small voice. So it was when Elijah heard it that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And then suddenly a voice came to him, the Lord, and he says, what are you doing here, Elijah? I love this passage because it's not in all the, incredible stuff. It wasn't any of that. The Lord shows up in a still small voice. So what does that mean for us? You see, God wants to meet you. And if you're thinking, it's going to be, crazy, nuts, fire, Hollywood style effects, He's given you his creation already. He wants to break through that thin veil. You know, at the beginning of that video, I talk about this thing that what the Celtics call the thin place. And I'm sure more than likely, many of you have already experienced that, where it just feels like our reality and eternity is just so close. It's just this little veil. And lots of times it happens in the most dramatic, painful situations. For me, I remember the first time it happened for me is when my dad passed away. And I was in the room with him. He was in a coma, and my family was in there. And my whole time praying, God, please I don't want to be in here by myself. And, you know, God says, okay. And everybody leaves, and I'm in there by myself. And then my dad gives his last breath. And all of a sudden, it was like eternity was so close. And that changed my life quite a bit. Seeing my loved one, I wasn't close with my dad, and we were just getting close. And seeing him pass into eternity, that was something really amazing, something really spiritual there. That thin veil, the thin place. But you know, today there's so much distraction, as we covered, so many things in our lives. You know, our ears are not trained for that still small voice anymore. You know, and it's always, I kind of hate it that, you know, we have to be in this place where it's really hard and we're going through tough times. That's when all of a sudden, oh God, please, speak to me because I don't know what to do, right? But can you imagine if you had a relationship with God all the time? Things are going good. Lord, speak to me. I want to know what you want to do today. That's what he desires. That's what he really wants us to be like. But it starts with what? Being intentional, stopping, and observation, paying attention to the things around us. That's the key. You know, only then you'll be able to discern and hear God's voice and what he wants to do for you in your life. So my prayer for you guys is that we would learn to observe, that we would learn to listen to what the Lord has for us. Because, man, let me tell you, he really desires that more than anything in this world. God desires communication and relationship with you. You know, think back at Adam. Adam, where are you? Well, guess what? Just insert your name in there. Pete, where are you? What are you doing? I just want to hang out with you. You know, and here I am, you know, I'm years later, I remember being a newborn Christian, and I knew that even back then, and I'm still here learning it. Like Jim was saying, we're so thick, you know, I mean, we don't get it, and God all he wants to do is spend time with us, you know. So my prayer for you is just that we would really draw close to him. Let's close our eyes in prayer. Lord, we just come before you, and we just want to thank you, Lord, for just how you chase us and how you are after us, Lord. You blow us away with creation and all the beautiful things out there, the beautiful sunsets and sunrises, your animals that you've created, even down to the ant. There's so many things there that we could learn from, and you're constantly wanting to have that close, intimate relationship. And I just want to thank you, Lord, that you don't give up on us. If I was God, I probably would have given up a long time ago. But no, Lord, you are constantly after us, loving us, pouring your grace on us. Whatever you can do, that we can be in the same room with you. We just thank you for that, Lord. And so, Lord, we come to you as as believers, Lord. And maybe, Lord, there's people here who don't believe or not sure what they believe. I just pray that you would just reveal to them, Lord, that they would take the time to stop, to be intentional, and to observe what you have. And Lord, right now, as we step into communion, Lord, we pray, God, that you would just begin to speak to us in that, the ultimate sacrifice that you gave, because you want to be in the same room with us. We thank you for your son, Jesus, Lord. Thank you, Lord.